The closet door had been stuck for years, wedged slightly off its track in a way that always reminded Eleanor of the years she had spent avoiding it. At 71, she often felt like her life had been placed into compartments. The bright years of her youth, the busy years of raising children, the dark stretch of widowhood that had left her drifting in a sea of quiet, and now this slow, contemplative season where each day felt like an invitation to reflect, or to surrender. She rarely opened that particular door, because tucked behind the dresses that no longer fit and the jackets that carried the scent of another time was the weight of memory, and she was not always sure she could carry it again. That afternoon, sunlight stretched through the lace curtains of her small New Hampshire home, dust floating in the air like suspended time. She pressed her hand against the closet knob, the familiar resistance meeting her palm, as though even the house knew she wasn't ready. But something in her shifted. Perhaps it was the silence, pressing too heavily against her ears, or the way her own reflection in the mirror had begun to look like a stranger. She tugged harder, and with a reluctant creak, the door gave way. Inside, the scent was unmistakable. Cedar, fabric long undisturbed, and something faintly sweet, like the cologne her late husband Harold once wore. Her heart tightened. She brushed her fingers across the fabrics, pulling out a navy dress she hadn't worn since her son's wedding 20 years ago. Then she saw it, a small wooden box wedged between shoe boxes, nearly hidden by coats. Her fingers trembled as she lifted it down. The box was old, carved with swirls Harold had etched himself during his woodshop days. She hadn't remembered putting it there, and yet the moment she touched it, the memories came rushing back. The evenings when Harold would sit at the table, working with tools, while she read her books. She unlatched it slowly. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied with a fraying ribbon. Her breath caught as she unfolded the first. It was her own handwriting, dated nearly 50 years earlier. Letters she had written to Harold when they had first fallen in love. Words she had long forgotten, full of hope and the kind of fire that only youth could summon. Tears welled in her eyes as she traced the loops of her script, reading the voice of her younger self, bold, playful, fearless. Hours passed as she read. The afternoon faded into evening, but she did not move from the floor of her bedroom, surrounded by the fragments of a girl she thought she had lost. She realized then that the letters weren't just for Harold. They were for her too. They were proof that she had once been alive in ways she thought were beyond her reach now. In the days that followed, Eleanor carried the box with her. She began writing again, not to Harold but to herself, to the woman she still was beneath the silence and the wrinkles. She wrote about the pain of loneliness, about the joy of sunlight on her face, about the courage it took to open that closet door. She filled pages with ink until her hands ached, and slowly she felt her spirit stir awake. One morning, she brought her journal to the local park. Sitting on a bench, she watched children chase each other, their laughter filling the air. A woman beside her struck up a conversation, and before Eleanor knew it, she was laughing too. That laughter felt strange at first, as though it belonged to someone else, but then it settled into her chest warmly. She realized she had not laughed with another person in years. That chance encounter became the beginning of something new. Eleanor started joining a small writing group at the library, where older women gathered to share poems and stories. At first, she hesitated to read aloud, but one afternoon she unfolded one of her letters, her voice quivering as she shared the words of her 20-year-old self. The group listened with tenderness, and when she finished, they applauded gently, not just for the letter but for her courage. The box in her closet had not just unlocked memories, it had unlocked her. The woman who had been hiding behind silence and solitude began to step forward again. She redecorated her home with fresh flowers, painted her kitchen in soft yellow, and even began to plan trips she once thought were impossible. The letters reminded her that life had always been fragile, fleeting, but also endlessly capable of renewal. Late one evening, she sat at her desk, the final letter spread before her. It was the one Harold had written, the last he ever gave her before his illness took him. She read his words slowly, tears streaking her face, but instead of pain, she felt gratitude. He had loved her fully, and she had loved him. That love was not gone. It had simply changed form. It lived in the air of her home, in the strength of her heart, and in the courage she now had to live fully again. Eleanor closed the box and placed it back on the shelf. She no longer feared opening the closet, because she knew that within it lay not sorrow, but reminders of life's deepest truth. That even in the quietest, loneliest seasons, the heart is never too old to rediscover itself. Her story was not over. It was just unfolding again, letter by letter, laugh by laugh, moment by moment.